You're listening to Hockey Talk on the Rock.
All right, stop!
With Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
Here we go. We are back for episode number 33, fitting to be wearing the Henrik Sedin jersey for this episode. As we most know, the Canucks season ended today. They played their final game in Calgary. I guess I should mention it is May 15th.
No, 19th.
May the 19th, 7 o'clock. Thank you for that.
It's okay.
Here on Salt Spring from our respective locations, we're doing the Hockey Talk on the Rock. Like I said, episode 33. That's Laura. I'm Keith. Obviously excited because I've already jumped the intro to start talking about the end of the season because I think it's just more of a sigh of relief mixed with anger that it's finally over. Laura, take it away.
Well, it's one of those weeks, or really yesterday. I guess it started a bit before yesterday, where there was rumblings where I was like, okay, this has the potential to be good. It seems like something's going to happen and that there's going to be a management shakeup. And I wake up yesterday and feeling pretty good. And I, look online and there's people saying out there, like reputable people saying, I think that there's going to be an announcement tonight kind of thing about the Canucks, which was odd now that I look back on it, because you'd think they'd wait till the end of the season. They did have the game today. And then on top of that, they also extended all their scouting staff that day. So it seemed a bit weird. Like now that I think about it, I'm like, okay, maybe it was weird. And then the Canucks game happens, which is just like, whatever. Like it's hard. It was hard to watch. It didn't really matter. And during the game, Elliot Friedman tweets out that, I guess I'm skipping. I'll go back to the city and stuff in a second because I have skipped a lot. But this is just my emotion, I guess, talking. But yeah, so Friedman tweets out that it sounds like Benning's coming back and he's been told that by management. And it just blows my mind over if what was out there is true, that the Aquilini sat down and all together, not just Francesco, had a conversation about, the future of this team, the direction of this team. And if they came out of that meeting and were like, yeah, everything's good, Benning should come back, then there's a bigger problem than Jim Benning, right? Like, it baffles my mind. I was really angry last night. All the kind of hope I had going into the day was just gone. And it's just one of those things, right? Like, again, the Canucks, and we've talked about this forever, but like the pieces that are there are good pieces. And Jim Benning does have something to do with those. I don't know how much he has to do with those, but he's got something. And the pieces that are there are good foundational pieces in the right position. But I think if anything Benning has shown, he's not capable to fill out the rest of that roster. Yes, he's built a decent enough core, but he doesn't have any sort of ability to scout professional players. So that comes kind of going back in time to the rumors that started about a week ago that the Canucks had reached out to Jeff Courtnall, who they'd evidently talked to like 2 years ago or something, about Benning, or when Linden left, and he kind of was meant to have recommended, like, yeah, maybe you should have gone in a different direction. And then the Aquilinis were like, no, we'll keep Benning. So they reached out to him again for some sort of role that wasn't meant to be like president or GM, but maybe just to like go over what was going on in the organization. That could still come about. And then the other rumor that came out yesterday, or news that kind of broke, was that the Canucks had been talking to the Twins about some sort of position in the organization that would probably be something similar to like what Stevie Y did, or even forgetting his name, Chris Drury, there we go, in New York, where they come in and they learn the business for a few years from someone above them, and then they kind of take over that role. But like, I don't know. The Twins are smart. I wouldn't mind if they came back to the organization. I think they'd be welcome back with open arms, but it seems like a ploy to try and get fans happy when you're also announcing bringing back Benning. And I'm sorry, like, next year, if the Canucks have a slow start and there's fans back in the building, he's not gonna last. Like, you're just basically delaying the inevitable right now. And yeah.
So yeah, I got a couple things on that, I guess, but like I do guarantee that they sat around the Aquilinis and talked, but I guarantee that a large amount of their conversation was finance related.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't think it was necessarily a hockey decision that was made to keep banging. I think it was a money decision because I think they put out there that maybe they lost 20 million or something during the pandemic.
Right.
And Benning just got extended and he signed through however many more years, 2 more, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that played a large part in it, and because of
I've
that,
just got one thing to say about that. One tiny thing. And it goes back to when they re-signed Benning, like a year ago or over a year ago. It was before the pandemic. And it was a weird move at the time because everyone kind of assumed that we're gonna just basically give him the Travis Green treatment of this year, like let the year run out and see if they make the playoffs, and then if they do, maybe they give him something, but if they don't, let him leave. And then like a year before, they're like, oh no, here's your renewal. It was very puzzling at the time. So I'm like, yeah, okay, it's a money thing, but if you'd had any sort of foresight, maybe you shouldn't have extended him when you did.
yeah, but there was no money problem at that time.
Yeah.
So, the Travis Green thing, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a bit.
But the only other thing I got to say basically on your intro rant is I 100% agree with you that the Sedin news was a ploy, a distraction ploy. And I think the fans are too smart, and most people probably picked up on that.
Yeah. So I mean, if we want to jump into Travis Green and the treatment that he's had by the organization, so this is like a bit of a there's 2 points that I want to make in this rant, and I'll just start with the first one, which isn't specific to Travis Green. It's also player related. And like, if you remember last year when they're in the bubble, and like when Nate Schmidt joined the team, and he was like, oh, there was such a buzz about this team in the bubble and it was all good, and like players were wanting to come here, like Braden Holtby said, like, oh, Vancouver's a destination I want to come to. If you're a player or if you're a coach right now and you see the treatment that this organization has put on their coaching staff, why would you want to come here?
Right.
Like, I just think it's absolutely mind-boggling to me how, and you can even think back at like 10 years ago or whatever, when they had the really competitive team. Not only did they have a competitive team, but like their ownership was viewed as like pretty good. And it's just totally nosedived in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like you have these young core pieces that look really good and other players see them and you want to come and play with them, but people aren't going to want to play for a team that treats their employees basically like shit. And
that's why coaching staff and GMs would want to come. It's for the opportunity, right? They would probably be looking at non-experienced, on the cheap, first-time jobbers.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out a name to you because I think I know what the Canucks are going to do. And it's not me. This is not my prediction. This is coming from Drancer and Ian McIntyre. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be Claude Julien. And it makes way too much sense to me because of the Boston connection with Jim Benning. And then also, before they hired Travis Green, evidently they interviewed him and there was some push to have him then. And I actually think they're going to end up paying Julien more than whatever Green gets. And I think it's because Green will be viewed as the less experienced coach.
Interesting.
And yeah, like otherwise I'd be like, okay, I agree, it's all money and money, but I think this is a calculated move.
Okay.
And I stand by what I said yesterday or last week. I think Green ends up in Seattle. I think like the writing's on the wall for that one. But it's not only Green, right? Where you can also get into the Ian Clark thing and Demko's kind of plead to the media, which was to management through media, to keep his goalie coach around. And like, there's been rumors out there, I guess, of some goalies when they work with Ian Clark really don't like him because he pushes them really hard. But evidently Demko and him have a really good relationship. Like he likes working for him. And obviously you can see the results. You can see with Markstrom what he did and versus the year that Markstrom just had in Calgary. Mind you, I don't know how much of that is purely related to Ian Clark, but probably some of it is, right? And for you, if you're Philadelphia and you have, you know, Carter Hart, who just had a really awful season, and Ian Clark's out there and he's got this track record of working with goalies, is that not the first team? Like, that's the first team I think of with Ian Clark.
Yeah, something like that, or even Blackwood, New Jersey. But I hear what you're saying for sure. You'd think with just investing $25 million into Demko, they would be smart enough to recognize that that's a must do, But I digress. We'll see.
We'll see. And like I'd say I have slightly more faith in Green coming back, which is very little, than I do with Clark coming back. Like I think Clark is 100% gone, and Green in my mind is like 85% gone.
Well, time will tell. See
well,
you
we'll
today.
See. That's my Canuck rant. I mean, like, I guess if you want to talk, we could talk a little bit about some positives within the last week.
There were some good takeaways from the season. Travis Hamonic ended up being a positive for sure, and I hope they re-signed him.
I'll even throw out here, like, I actually think that Tyler Myers had a pretty good season, and it was overshadowed by the fact that the Canucks were awful. But if Tyler Myers had played that well, like last year, I think fans would have had less of a problem with him. And I don't have faith that he repeats it, but I think like he like offensively he was quite good, and he was.
I agree with you on that. I think Myers was good. I think the biggest plus of the season was Niels Hoglander.
For sure.
And then there was lots of disappointments.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the last couple weeks here, like for me, the biggest positive besides Hoglander, because I think he's also been very noticeable since the COVID break, is definitely Jack Rathbone. And
he's been great.
I almost feel like the Canucks going into this draft, which we'll get to in a bit, like if you think of like kind of the offensive minded defensemen that are at the top of this draft that I thought the Canucks would be looking at, with how Rathbone looks right now, I don't even know if they need to prioritize that anymore, which could be scary. I mean, always take the best player available over position and all that, but like Rathbone looks legit, and I don't think it's just like it's an end of the season, no one's really trying kind of thing. I think he's for real. So that for me was a big positive. And then like the bottom six that we've seen in the last couple weeks, I don't remember what the numbers are now, but they drastically outscored the bottom six that was with the Canucks for the first half of the season. And I think we can all agree that Jimmy Vesey is not coming back. I think he didn't play a factor. To me, he looked like I don't want to say the worst option out there, because I still think I prefer him to like, Beagle and Sutter and Roussel and those guys, but I don't think he comes back. No. I actually surprisingly really liked Grayovac.
Yeah,
and like I know he's slow and you don't probably want him in your lineup full time, but he put up points and he looked pretty good. So again, he's one of those guys that's like, okay, like, yeah, like maybe he gets in a few more games next year or whatever, but he can't be a regular. But I don't know, like it's just tough. And then like I thought Howard looked good at the end. I actually think Travis Boyd in the last few games played better than he did for the.
I don't think Travis Boyd is like a fourth line center moving forward.
Yeah, he'd be fine, right? And like I think there's something there. I thought Highmore played better as it progressed. So
I think the biggest takeaway that the team needs from that is with all the injuries, it gave them the ability to really look at that bottom six and realize probably how slow and how much upgrading it really did need,
So yeah, that was kind of like my overall look, I guess, at those guys, and then just touching on the other rookies that played their first games here in the last few games. Like Gadjovic got the one game. I didn't watch that game. I was driving, so I listened to it, but I can't really speak to his game. And then like Lockwood, and then Lind, who played the most out of those three. And I don't really think any of them are NHL ready by the sounds of it. I thought Lockwood was okay yesterday, but again, like with these last couple Calgary games, it is really hard to judge how good these players are because it was so shinny-ish, right?
Yeah.
But good for them for getting in, and
now they've got a taste, and hopefully they work real hard in the off season, and they come in and they push real hard, and that's
yeah.
Okay. Do you got any other Canucks?
I have two more quick Canuck things. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the first one is, I don't know if you heard about this, but there's rumors that today one of the players isn't going back to Vancouver for exit interviews. He's just flying home.
Oh, Tanner Pearson.
Okay, because the person that I heard that was JT Miller.
Oh.
Caused all this speculation that he might get have requested a trade. I don't think like Tanner Pearson's going to request a trade after signing that deal, right? But
no, it was from what I heard, Tanner Pearson got approval. Like he requested to fly home early for like family reasons or something.
Okay.
So and they gave him approval. It was like a totally mutual agreement. Like
okay.
Yeah.
Then I won't get into that one because that was a whole extra can of worms. But just gonna quickly touch on to kind of illustrate a point here about Jim Benning. But there's a couple Canucks in the last couple games I've seen quite a lot of ex-Canucks, and they were traded from Vancouver for pieces that turned into be nothing. Although I guess hypothetically one of them did turn into something. So the first one is Gustav Forsling, who the Canucks traded, for like 10-day games of Adam Clendening or whatever.
Right. They included Clendening in the trade for Sutter, right?
Yes. So actually both of them did get something back, but there's something. Anyway, so Forsling had 43 games with Florida this year. He had 5 goals, 12 assists, 17 points, and he's 24, which isn't bad. More importantly, he looks pretty good. Like he looks like a top 4 NHL defenseman, and I find that very frustrating to watch. But with him, maybe there's a little bit of the pain is taken away because again of how Rathbone looked in the last little while. But it's just one of those things where you don't manage your prospects and it's annoying. And the other one is Jared McCann, who's also 24 years old, and he had 14 goals, 18 assists, and 32 points this year, and is probably exactly what the Canucks need as a third-line center right now. Again, with him, I understand why they traded him. He didn't fit with the locker room at that time, but I also think they rushed him, which was the bigger problem with it, and probably if he let him mature a bit in the minors, he wouldn't have been such a dick when he came into the NHL. I don't know, right? Like maybe he didn't fit with the locker room at all, but it's just like moves like that I look back at and it bugs me like almost more than the whole Toffoli thing. But like you're just not managing your players. You're not getting the assets back that you need for what you have. And yeah. So
well, he lucked out. He lucked out though. He lucked out because that was a good Branson trade, right?
Yeah.
So he got lucky. Too bad they didn't put Virtanen in that deal instead of McCann.
Yeah, exactly, right? Anyway, so that's all I have for Canucks talk.
All right. Well, the one quick little league news from the week, I guess, that I'll mention is Detroit. Surprisingly, I didn't see it coming. Extended coach Blashill for 2 years, I think, maybe.
I believe it's 2 years. Yeah.
So when we update our coaching carousel predictions, I'll throw Blashill on Detroit, and I'm pretty sure you guessed Gallant and I guessed Claude Julien, so we'll call it 0 for 1.
Yeah, we'll go 0 for 1 there. I said to you, I wasn't super surprised with it, only because he survived last year, and then this year Detroit was like a lot tougher to play against, and usually, hypothetically, coaches that make their players work hard usually don't get fired. So
right.
Anyway, wasn't super surprised, but good for him.
Alrighty, and then the final segment, we'll call it that, right?
Are we doing the draft or?
Oh yeah, we're gonna do a quick little impromptu draft simulator since the Canucks finished 8th last in the league, but they get the 9th worst odds because Seattle gets the 3rd best odds as the new team. So yeah, Vancouver has the best or the 9th best odds to win draft lottery. That'll be on June the 2nd. I'm gonna sim the lottery.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had it on the screen, but
did ya?
Yeah.
Like you
I'm screen sharing, yeah.
I'll go for it then.
Okay, here we go. Detroit. Vancouver stays 9th. It's disappointing, but not surprising.
Good for Detroit.
Yeah. Okay.
Bummer for Buffalo. Okay, so do I gotta do it now? How'd that happen?
Yeah, so if you I don't know if you want to share it.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
So if you go to the green button at the bottom of the screen that says share.
Can you see my stuff?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, man,
Seattle-
I'd be so pissed.
Ottawa moves up to 2nd from 10th, and Vancouver moves down 1. not that great. Okay, I'm gonna stop doing that now. Alrighty, well that was a bummer. But well, it's probably very likely what is gonna happen.
Yeah, I think the Canucks have a 5% odd, like 5% odds right now of drafting first overall with how they finished. So probably not gonna happen, but stranger things have happened. And if the Canucks ever did win a draft lottery, it would probably be this year. So
I like it. Okay, final segment here. I will try to quickly go through our predictions we did for the league standings at the beginning of the year, which turned out not great really for either of us. So, starting with the North, I'm not going to talk about the real standings because the people know how the real life happened, but basically you have Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal as your playoff teams. 2 out of 4 on the playoff teams. And positioning, you got 2 out of 4 right. I had Montreal, Winnipeg, Toronto, Calgary in the playoffs. So I had 3 out of the 4 of those right, but only 1 in the whole division in the right position. And we both got Ottawa correct as being the last. And Montreal, you got correct as being 4th. So very good work. You got me on the North Division, but we didn't do that good.
no.
East Division, we had, let's see, you had Philly, Washington, Islanders, Boston making the playoffs, and 3 out of 4, Pittsburgh instead of Philly. And I had Boston, Philly, Washington, Islanders, so same deal. I had Philly instead of Pittsburgh, and that did not happen. You got Washington, New Jersey, Buffalo, right? In their
Correct spots.
In their correct spots, yes, in the seeding. And I only got the Islanders and the Rangers at 4 and 5. Central, we both did not great here either. I found out going through this though that you were very good at predicting who was going to get like the last 2 places in the division. So in this one, you had Tampa Bay, Carolina, Dallas, Columbus as your 4 playoff teams, and Dallas, Columbus did not make the show. I had Tampa, Carolina, Dallas, Nashville, and Dallas did not make it, like I said. So I got 3 out of 4, and you got 2 out of 4 for playoff teams right, and for getting teams in the right spots, you got Detroit and Chicago at 7th and 8th correct, and I got Nashville at 4th correct. And we'll put this up on the screen so it's not just me yammering away through it. Final one, West Division. We both had similar. You had Colorado, Vegas, St. Louis, San Jose as your 4 playoff teams, and San Jose didn't make it. Minnesota did. I had Colorado, St. Louis, Vegas, and Minnesota, so I got a 4 for 4 sweep on this one, but none in the right order except for Colorado. And you got Colorado, Vegas in the right order, and Anaheim being in the bottom. So at the end of it all, we went 1 and 1 on this, I think, because you had 10 teams out of 31 in the correct positions, and I only had 5.
Yeah.
But when it comes to predicting the teams in the playoffs, you had 10 out of 16, and I had 13 out of 16.
Nice.
So we're
Even
good at least at sort of kind of figuring out who's going to be in the show. and you're
Yeah.
really good at knowing who's the worst.
That's, might be my special talent.
And then at some point, I'm going to put up a photo of our little bracket that we did from our
Okay. Sweet.
bracket challenge too. So
Yeah.
I think that was good. It was a good ramble.
Yeah.
It was a good post-mortem episode, I think, to kind of dissect a little bit of the frustration going on in the Canucks end of the year. And we'll try to do this again in a few days, maybe a week's time, depending on how the news flows. But definitely during or near the end of round one of the playoffs, we'll get back and we'll talk about how the playoffs are going.
Sounds good.
Alrighty. Well, this has been another episode 33 of Hockey Talk on the Rock. Woo woo.
Woohoo!